Hello, my name is Cheryl Ellis and today I'm going to show you how to make a white gluten and dairy-free loaf. Now the hardest thing, I think, once you start a gluten-free diet is to find a substitute for ordinary bread, because once you take the gluten out of the flour, which is what makes bread very stretchy, often you find that the gluten-free loaf is very hard and unpalatable. So today I'm going to show you how to make a white loaf which my son enjoys every day for his sandwiches at school and works every time. To start with, I have a large mixing bowl with the eggs. To that I've added olive oil, cider vinegar, and I'm going to now add the water. And we're just going to give that a light beating to incorporate it all. That's now been beaten in, and I've changed the blades from the balloon blades to the bread dough hooks. To the liquid I'm going to add the flour and polenta, and I've sieved the flour to make sure that it's nice and light. Once that's in, I'm going to add the final ingredients, which I've already weighed out. This is the salt, sugar, xanthan gum and yeast, which goes straight on top, and all we're going to do now is give that a very thorough beating. I've just given that a couple of minutes. What I'm going to do, because gluten-free flour doesn't incorporate particularly well, is to scrape the bowl round, and I'm going to continue beating this for about 15 minutes until the mixture is very light and spongy. I've now beaten the mixture, in fact probably for about 11 minutes altogether. It's very, very creamy and it's already starting to rise up a little bit in the bowl. All I'm going to do now is to spoon it into a tin which I've already prepared by brushing it with oil and then dusting with the gluten-free flour. Right, I've spread all that round and evenly distributed the dough, pushing it into the corners carefully. What we're going to do now is put this in a warm place to proof for about 1 hour. Now I always put it in the airing cupboard because the dry, warm atmosphere is just perfect to develop the yeast. Now don't cover this with anything. What will happen is the top will rise up quite considerably. If you put anything over the top of it, that will stick to the very delicate dough. So just leave it open. If it dries a little bit, that's fine. That will help to develop the crust. Right, the loaf has had about an hour in the airing cupboard, and you can see it's now proved the yeast has actually multiplied within the dough and it's risen above the level of the tin. This can now go straight into the oven. I've got here a preheated hot baking sheet, and we'll pop that straight into a hot oven which has been preheated, and we'll cook for about 25 minutes. Right, the bread has now had 20 minutes. What I'm going to do is take the bread out of the loaf tin, put it back on the baking sheet and put it back into the oven just to dry the outer crust out. Right, that's now going back into the oven, and what that will do is just dry the crust out around the edges, because gluten-free bread does tend to hold more moisture than ordinary bread. The bread is now cooked around the edges. We're going to leave this on a baking tray for several hours, ideally overnight, to let the bread thoroughly cool down and thoroughly dry out. This recipe will also work very well in bread makers, and for this recipe and many other delicious gluten and dairy-free recipes, please go to www.allergydiet.co.uk.